Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. Continuing on with NFL Week 5, Giants on the road in Seattle. Let's do it.
Welcome to the SWUS. The SWUS. SWUS. Hey, get the SWUS.
All right, like I said, Giants are on the road out west in Seattle. Seahawks are laying 6, or it looks like most books are bumping this up to 6.5. There are still a couple 6s out there, but for the most part, looks like it's jumping up to 6.5. Total sitting at 43.5 pretty much across the board. So let's take a look at the pie charts here, and according to this data, action's coming in pretty heavily on the Seattle side, which makes sense. Over 75% of the tickets, over 85% of the money on the Seahawks. But again, as I always say, take this data with a grain of salt. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start with some head-to-head history. Seattle has owned the Giants 6-1 in their last 7 matchups against the Giants, 6-1 straight up and 6-1 against the spread, 5-1 to the under in the last 6 matchups. So if you've been betting Seattle and the under in Giants Seahawks games, you've been making some money. So let's get into the Giants offense here. Obviously, we know this is not a powerhouse unit. They're actually dead last in yards per carry, 32nd in yards per carry. I mean, it's a bottom 5 rushing attack, bottom 10 passing attack. I mean, the passing numbers have improved a little bit in the last few weeks for Daniel Jones, but I mean, we know this isn't a great offense. Offensive line was supposed to be bolstered this year, right? They brought in some pieces, not creating any space in the run game. 31st in adjusted line yards, 31st in run blocking grade, 22nd in yards before contact. Last week, they played the Cowboys, who are looking like one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. In fact, if you look at most numbers entering last week, they were the worst run defense in the NFL. So how did the Giants' run game respond to playing such a bad run defense? Well, they rushed for 27 yards in the game, 1.17 yards per carry, under a 22% rushing success rate there. So they couldn't even run on the Cowboys last week. Safe to say, I don't have a ton of faith in the Giants' run game right now, even though it looked like Singletary was heating up. They were running the ball on Washington a little bit. Yeah, that was a really sad performance for the Giants' run game. Now they're matched up against the Seahawks defense, which has been very good. They're 4th in the NFL in yards per play, 6th in success rate, 10th in EPA, 8th in DVOA. So this is a top 10 defense, maybe even a top 5 defense. You do have to question the strength of schedule. They've seen some really bad offenses. Now, obviously, last week was not a great showing for the Seahawks defense. Detroit was able to move the ball at will against the Seahawks. The running backs' rushing numbers actually not insane as you may think. I mean, they averaged just 4.54 yards per carry in the game, 118 yards between Gibbs and Montgomery. So that really wasn't that bad. Goff went off, though. Seattle's defense had no answers to the Lions in Ford Field. So it's a little concerning that the Seahawks defense looked so elite until they actually saw an offense. That's definitely not a great look. But we do have to take into consideration that they were missing everybody. I mean, they're all listed as questionable this week, so maybe they're getting everybody back. But Leonard Williams didn't play, Nwosu didn't play, Mafe didn't play, Byron Murphy didn't play, who would be one of the defense, that's their first-round pick. He would have been one of the guys seeing a lot of the field with these injuries. He was out as well. Jerome Baker's listed as questionable this week. So a lot of injuries to the Seahawks defense on Monday night. Not to mention, the Lions were really due for an offensive breakout game. I mean, Jared Goff hadn't looked right this season. So prime time, it was a perfect spot for Jared Goff to break out. So, I mean, I'm not reading too much into that with the injuries. I still have a lot of faith in the Seahawks defense, especially if they're healthy. So as long as Seattle gets a couple of these pieces back, I don't need every single one healthy and on the field, but let's give me 2 back. As long as we get a couple pieces back, I don't think the Giants are going to be able to run the ball on the road out here in Seattle. But what about the pass game? Now, we do have to give the Giants some credit. Let's give Daniel Bones some credit. He has been improving. The opener against the Vikings was awful. 186 yards passing. I mean, 44.3 passer rating, 4.4 yards per pass attempt. Looking back, though, it doesn't look quite so bad. I mean, I expected the Vikings defense to be good, a top 10 unit. I wasn't expecting them to look like the best defense in the NFL. Not to mention, Malik Neighbors is such a huge part of the Giants offense right now. It was his first NFL game, so looking back at that week 1 game against the Vikings now, it doesn't look quite as bad. And like I said, let's give Daniel Bones some credit. Since then, he's been all right. In their last 3 games, the Giants are averaging over 231 passing yards per game, over a 51% success rate per dropback. That's good. An average pass rating of 95.9, 6.7 yards per pass attempt. This isn't bad. The Giants' passing offense has been somewhat formidable in the last 3 weeks. Now, here's where it gets a little bit concerning. It's very one-dimensional. I mean, Malik Neighbors, 52 targets compared to 84 for the rest of the team. It's pretty much Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, and that's it. I mean, it's not a very versatile passing attack. He's got 386 receiving yards. The rest of the team combined has 495. 3 receiving touchdowns. The rest of the team combined has 1. So it's a very one-dimensional passing attack. Here's why that's especially concerning. He might not even play in this game. He's listed as questionable. Wan'Dale Robinson listed as questionable as well. He's second on the team in receiving yards. The rest of the Giants combined have like 100 receiving yards on the season. So these are the only 2 guys producing for Daniel Jones as far as catching passes, and Devin Singletary is listed as questionable. So there are 3 main offensive weapons surrounding Daniel Jones, all listed as questionable. Definitely don't love to see that, especially when they're going on the road to Seattle against a Seahawks defense that's been really good against the pass so far this year. 6th in yards per pass attempt allowed, 5th in success rate per dropback, 8th in EPA, 8th in pass defense DVOA. The first 3 games of the season, they were looking like the best pass defense in the NFL. Granted, they saw nobody, but just 157.7 passing yards per game allowed, 4.7 opponent yards per pass attempt allowed. Yes, Jared Goff ripped them to shreds last week. 299 yards, 15.7 yards per pass attempt is insane. Over a 68% success rate per dropback. So, and a perfect passer rating, by the way, 158.3. So Jared Goff ripped the Seahawks to shreds last week. But like I said, both their edge rushers were out. I mean, they were banged up on the interior as well. The Lions were consistently running the ball as well. So McDonald had to make some adjustments in the second half to try and stop that. Left some big plays wide open for Goff. So look, it was one game. They had a lot of injuries. And like I said, Goff was due for a breakout game. So I'm not reading too much into it. I think this Seahawks defense is really good. The only hesitation here is all the injuries on both sides. I mean, the Seahawks defense, like we talked about, loaded with question marks this year. And the Giants, Neighbors, Robinson, Singletary, all questionable. So how can we really make a prediction at this moment? We got to wait and see who's playing, who's going to be on the field. But what about the other side? What about the Seahawks offense? And honestly, if you watch the Monday Night Football game, sure, you had problems with the Seahawks' battered defense, but that Seahawks offense looked awesome. I mean, this is looking like a top 10 offense, maybe even a top 5 passing offense. On the season, they're 8th in yards per play, 9th in success rate, 11th in EPA, 4th in DVOA. Yes, the pass protection is a little bit concerning, but we were talking about it last week. Geno Smith's one of those guys that gets the ball out quick, and a lot of times that can mask the problems you have on your offensive line in terms of pass protection. And we saw it last week. The Lions have a good pass rush. Seattle went off in that game. They only scored only 29 points. That's a lot. 7 yards per play. That's insane. 7 yards per play, over 62% success rate, plus 23.7% DVOA. The offense was good as hell on the road in Detroit. Yes, they lost that game 42-29, but they outgained the Lions by 120 yards, 516 yards to 389. They averaged 7 yards per carry. 7 yards per carry on the road in Detroit. Now, that's a little bit misleading. They broke a couple of longer runs in the fourth quarter when they were down 2 scores, where I would imagine the Lions were sitting back and maybe a cover 4 or something. So it wasn't quite 7 yards per carry, but they were running the ball. Kenneth Walker was making plays on the Lions defensive front, which is one of the better run defenses in the NFL. So that's a great sign. Now, speaking of good defensive fronts, we got to give the Giants some flowers. They're really coming on, looking like a top 10 defensive line here. I mean, they're 10th in adjusted line yards, 9th in run defense grade, not really getting bullied in the run game. Also, they're generating pressure. 5th in pressure rate, 7th in adjusted sack rate. The defense as a whole, though, not great. And I was talking about this last week. All of the Giants' defensive metrics are skewed by that Cleveland game. They played the Browns, who are missing 3 offensive linemen, and they just had such an excellent defensive game that it's making the Giants' defense on paper look a little bit better than it is. If you look at the Cleveland game, Browns just 196 yards passing, 5.3 yards per attempt, just an 89.5 passer rating. Look at the Giants' pass defense in their other 3 games. 8.2 yards per attempt, over a 58% success rate per dropback, an average passer rating of 112.6. So you take out the Browns game, and quarterbacks, even Jaden Daniels in his second career start, have not had problems throwing the ball in the Giants. So this is not a good pass defense, even though it looked really good in the Cleveland game. And as far as defending the run, I mean, the Giants have looked okay in their last 2 games. I mean, they played Cleveland, missing 3 offensive linemen, and then they played the Cowboys, who have one of the worst rushing attacks in the NFL. They allowed like 3.9 yards per carry in those 2 games, so it's not like they were elite. They were just okay against 2 bad rushing attacks. Look at their first 2 games of the season against the Vikings and the Commanders, 2 teams that can actually run the ball. They allowed 5.7 yards per carry, over 164 rushing yards per game. So I don't think this is a very good run defense either. And Seattle, I know you don't think of them as a team that can run the ball, but like I said, they got it going against the Lions on Monday Night Football. And we have to mention that Kenneth Walker missed weeks 2 and 3. In the 2 games that Kenneth Walker played, they're averaging over 141 rushing yards per game, 5.78 yards per carry, over a 43% success rate. So the run game has been there in the 2 games Kenneth Walker played. Now, it's just a 2-game sample size, but still, Kenneth Walker being healthy, which, by the way, let's pull up their depth chart, which is another positive thing for the Seahawks. They're healthy. The offense is healthy with the exception of the situation they're having at right tackle. The rest of the Seahawks offense is good to go. So even though they're on a short week, which I don't love, they're at home against the Giants defense I don't think is very good. For the most part, they're healthy offensively. They're going to make plays. I think the Seahawks are going to put points on the board. Unfortunately, the injuries on the other side of the ball between the Giants offense and the Seahawks defense, that's preventing me from throwing down a bet right now. But if you're looking to bet something right now, what about the Seahawks team total over? 24.5, you can get it at -110 right now. Seattle team total over 24.5. Depending on what news breaks with the injuries there on that side of the ball, I'm going to be probably on Seattle, but I'm not going to lay 6.5 points if they're missing their entire defensive front. Again, I can't do that. That was painful to watch. I had Seahawks plus 5.5. I watched their offense score on every single possession, basically, and they still couldn't cover. So I'm not going to put myself through that again. I like Seattle to score points in this one. If the Seahawks defense is going to be relatively healthy, I like the defense to play well too. I think they win comfortably, but again, not placing a bet until I see some injury updates. If you'd like to see all the bets I currently have open, head over to KyleKirms.com and click on Open Bets. You'll see all mine as well as everyone on the staff here. Also, if you sign up to Sauce Network Plus, it comes with access to the Discord, and you can participate in the weekly betting league. $150 cash and one of these trophies go to the winner every single week. So if you're interested, head over to the website and sign up. Live shows, Saturday morning college football, 10 a.m. up to kickoff. We'll be live for 2 hours, going through as many games as we can. Sunday morning, 11 a.m. up to kickoff. We'll go through every single NFL game. We'll have some guests on, you know, same as we always do. So if you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. Let's have ourselves a nice week 5 here. NFL's off to a great start, man. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about college football, kicking my ass, but NFL's been good. So let's keep that rolling. Please remember to bet responsibly. Talk to you in the Discord.